Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first annual ShoreView presented by the Lloyd D. Levinson Institute of Gaming, Hospitality, and Tourism in the School of Business at Stockton University. Every spring for the past 12 years, Light has presented Shorecast, which is a look forward to the upcoming summer season. This year we're doing ShoreView, which is a reflection back to the results of the summer, and we hope to make this an annual event. So thank you for joining us. I'm Jane Buckinevich. I'm the coordinator for the Light Institute, and I'm joined here today by Anthony Catanoso, who is our moderator for the day, along with a panel of experts. Today, after the discussion, we will have a Q&A session, and you'll be able to ask your questions by clicking on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible, and we apologize in advance if we miss any of your questions. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Anthony to start the panel.
Good morning. Thank you, Jane, and welcome everybody to our fall ShoreView. I'm Anthony Catanoso, as Jane said, from Steel Pier in Atlantic City. At this time, I'd like to thank Dr. Jane Buckinowitz and Sarah Grady of the Light Institute and Stockton University for all their hard work in organizing this event and all the work they do on a year-round basis for Stockton University, the Light Institute, as well as our entire Shore region. At this time, I'd like to have our panelists introduce themselves, and let's start with Vicki Clark.
Good morning. Thank you, Anthony. It's so nice to be with everyone here today. I'm Vicki Clark. I am the president of the Cape May County Chamber of Commerce, and I am serving as the immediate past president of the New Jersey Tourism Industry Association. It's great to be with all of my colleagues here on the panel today.
Okay, Michael Brennan.
Good morning. I'm Michael Brennan. I am the executive chef at Josie Kelly's in Somers Point and currently working on opening Cardinal Restaurant and Hotel on New York Avenue in Atlantic City. And it's a pleasure to be on the panel today.
Thank you. And Jim Zeros.
Morning. Thanks for joining us. My name is Jim Zeros. I'm Vice President of Sales for Caesars Entertainment Atlantic City region. So that includes Tropicana, Caesars, Resort, Harrah's Resorts, and Bally's until next month. Thank you.
Thank you. And Oliver Cook.
Hi, all. It's a pleasure to be here again. Thanks to Light, all my fellow panelists today. I'm Oliver Cook. I'm an associate professor of economics at Stockton University, and I kind of regularly track, the larger New Jersey economy and the local regional economy as well. Happy to be with you today.
Great, thanks. So I'd like to welcome our panelists. Now, I'll be asking the questions of our panelists today, but before we start, I want to offer a few observations from the Steel Pier perspective that we found this summer, because to get an opportunity to share what we experienced. Back in the spring, we did a Zoom meeting, and we talked about finding or establishing what the new normal will be this summer. And speaking for ourselves, we never really found it, and I think we're still searching for it. And part of the problem was the moving goalpost that we all had to deal with through executive orders and different regulations, mostly on the state level. In our particular case, with the inside dining being shut down, it boosted our outside dining experience and business. But there was certainly some trepidation on a lot of people's parts on what was going to happen next as business owners. I know the Restaurant Association was very frustrated this summer, couldn't get a meeting, couldn't get the attention of the governor's office to get the ball rolling. So we dealt with those different variables all summer long. Just to share some of our numbers, we found this year that we had upwards of 90% of our market from the New York City area, and due to the fact that most of the stuff in New York was shut down. So we had some weeks where we were at 90%, 85 to 90% New York, and 90% of our market was 18 to 34 years old. So we were really, I would say, up 20% from our normal North Jersey, New York visitation. So that's some of the things we found. We had, of course, challenges in the enforcement area, masks, sanitation, things like that, social distancing. We had to stay on top of that. We're an outside venue, so people felt a little more galvanized being outside, a little more safer. So we still had to stay on top of that. So that was one of our big challenges. And I think one of the biggest challenges, as crazy as it sounds, is the no dancing rule. So when you had outside entertainment, you had people gathering, they wanted to dance. So we were the big bad wolf, and we had to say, you can't dance, you can't dance. So that was one of the challenges we had. Even though it sounds ridiculous, it was a big problem in some cases. So there's some of the things that we experienced. So I'd like to start this off, and this is a question to our panelists. From a business perspective, how did summer 2020 compare to the past summer and tourism seasons? And let's start with Vicki.
Well, we did better than we anticipated, certainly as we looked at everything being shut down in the springtime, everyone just, had doom and gloom in their thinking going into the season. But, I will say that it turned out better than anyone expected that it would. July and August, which is traditionally our prime time, rebounded nicely, but everyone will report that it was off from, what it was in 2019, because when we were really staged to have a record-setting season going into 2020. January and February were, just doing very, very well for us, in the winter months. And of course, the pandemic, the shutdown, everything started, at the absolute worst time that it could from every perspective. One of the, really worst things for us was, of course, the closing of the U.S.-Canadian border. So we lost the Canadian market, which is one of, our significant customer bases. But we found that those customers were replaced with a new customer. And every community, every business that I talk to tells us that they experience visitors that have never been to Cape May County before, never vacationed at the Jersey Shore before. And, so that was a whole new experience for our businesses. We saw a considerable increase in the camping industry, which can truthfully boast that they are the original social distancing experience. It is by nature where people can go and naturally be safely distanced away from everybody. And so the camping industry did very well. There was a huge surge in people purchasing RVs and other camping vehicles. But at the same time, campground owners and managers were teaching people how to camp. They were teaching people what those strange sounds were in the middle of the night. They were teaching people how to build fires. So that was a whole learning curve for everybody. Cape May County was also very well positioned for the expansion in the expanded outdoor dining and the lightening of liquor laws and things like that. And so as I say, as we move on into the fall season, we're hopeful that a lot of that will continue. But all in all, to answer your question, Anthony, the summer 2020 was better than we thought it would be, and we're cautiously optimistic.
Thanks, Vicki. Jim?
It's funny that Vicki left off with cautiously optimistic, because I wanted to start off by saying all my life I've always been hopelessly optimistic. And these past 7 months have certainly taught me to be more realistically optimistic. There's a lot of problem solving that goes on, and Anthony, you alluded to the moving goalpost, and we found ourselves in that situation. Right when we weren't sure when we were going to open. We were shooting for Memorial Day, really hoping that casinos will open. We were able to get it open before 4th of July with not a lot of lead time. And at that time when we thought we were opening, we thought there would be indoor dining. So that moved. So there was a lot of collaboration amongst ourselves, our executive team, our partners, to try to make the experience the best we could for the guests. In the summertime, we we did fairly well, but it was a different mix. It was definitely, our core customers who might have a comp room, they didn't flock back because of some of the amenities that weren't being offered at the time. Now it's slowly starting to come back. Valet parking, for instance, for a certain level is just one example. But we found that there were more cash rooms than comp rooms. And that was in the summertime on a Friday and Saturday night. That wasn't always the case. So now we're slowly adding on amenities to get people back and get people to a comfort level that it's clean and it's safe and we have these protocols in place. I just want to say from a meetings and convention perspective too, we had the luxury of having some very nice weather, so we could do groups outside. At Harrah's, they put up a large tent and they were able to have 4 large groups out behind the Waterfront Conference Center. And that was a creative way to accommodate a group. We had, when we didn't have indoor dining, we took our pool at the Chelsea, and we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner that were set up under the tents, and it was a really nice experience. What that did was that pushed more demand in our outdoor pool. So now you have those challenges to make sure that there aren't too many people out there at one time, and people are socially distancing and wearing their masks and doing the right things. But from what I've seen, all of the operators in town have really kind of been able to turn on the dime and react to some of the moving goalposts, as you said.
Thanks, Jim. Oliver.
Yeah, I think that, to go back to what Vicky said initially, I think certainly having kind of written a piece last spring, right as we kind of went into lockdown, I think that everyone understandably was very, doom and gloom. In fact, I had given a presentation to a group, Vicky's group, I think it was in February, early February, and we were all, cheering how, that 2020 was indeed going to be another banner summer, looking back at 19. And, obviously, to Jim's point, people had to pivot very quickly. I think the level of, ingenuity, watching businesses, even, in my own local community is always kind of remarkable, what people can think of when they're really push. And I think you saw a lot of that certainly along the shore. I spent several weeks down on the shore with my own family this summer. And, I think from a kind of a macro level perspective, I'll agree with Vicky. I think that the bottom line was that it was probably better than what you could hope for. And that's probably about as good of an outcome, frankly, as you can get. If you look at like third quarter numbers just basically came in for me, the numbers that I am most concerned about. And most of those suggest that, in the second quarter, employment was down about 43%. 43,000 jobs, right, year on year in the second quarter. And this bounced back and was about 23,000 in the third quarter. So there was indeed somewhat of a bounce back, right? And I think most of the local business community would tell you that, but that's still, almost 18% down year on year in terms of total employment. And this is just Atlantic City. This is, adding Cape May would obviously, take that further down. And, not surprisingly, a lot of it was the casinos, restaurants, and retail, which is exactly what you would expect. So, I again, to Jim's point, I think I'm, cautiously optimistic. I think as we kind of look out into 2021, and I think that we'll move into these questions later, the public health story is obviously going to lead the way. And the faster that, some of comes down the line in 2021, the more optimistic we can become over the next couple of months here.
Thanks, Oliver. Mike, want to wrap that one up? Mike?
Yeah, sorry, my internet connection just came off for a second. So this was my first season at Josie Kelly's, but one of the things that we kind of noticed a trend throughout the outdoor dining season was, it was a lot better when it comes to the daily sales. So we beat last year's sales per day, just doing outdoor dining with kind of a minimal seating capacity. Obviously, we couldn't fit as many seats outside in our outdoor dining as we could inside. We didn't have party business. But we also saw how much more in food sales than we did in alcohol. So in retrospect, it was a better season for us numbers wise. However, when it comes down to a profit margin, obviously we're going to have a bigger profit margin on alcohol than food sales. So when it comes from an operator standpoint, it was kind of interesting to see, you know, people's trends when it comes to outdoor dining. They're going to eat more food, but they're not necessarily going to drink, or we're not getting that bar sale. So it was a great season. However, when it comes down to it, you know, for an operator standpoint in a restaurant, we want to see more bar sales rather than food sales. We want to see more parties coming in and booking larger scale events. Unfortunately, we just didn't have that capacity. So I think the real telltale sign is going to be what happens in, you know, the winter months, once outdoor dining can't really be a feasible option, once we have to move inside due to the weather. But there are still people that are hesitant about coming inside as well. So we have a little bit of an older clientele who still opts to eat outside rather than transition inside, just for that peace of mind when it comes to dining. But with that lies a burden on the operator as well. So the initial opening cost to start outdoor dining, plus the heaters and continuing this out through the season, just again kind of eats at the numbers that we saw for the summer season. So really, when it comes down to the winter season, we're going to have a better idea of what we did in the summer and how that goes into 2021.
Thanks, Mike. Before I move on with my questions, we have a question from one of the attendees for Jim. Jim, and the question is from Mike Priscilla. How was the drop and win with more cash rooms versus comp rooms of the best players?
Well, the numbers recently just came out for September, and kind of the bricks and mortar, the slots and the tables were both down. So slots, for instance, were down for the industry 9.6%, whereas tables was down about 25.5%. However, the internet gaming piece and the sports betting is a really good news story for the entire industry. So we are strong. You know, keep in mind, when you walk on a casino floor, just about every other slot machine is turned off. There's fewer seats at a gaming table. So, you know, that also contributes to, you know, not as much revenue as in previous, you know, comparing it to previous years.
Okay, thanks. And thanks for the question. Now, this is more for Jim and Mike, and we'll let Mike lead it off. Give a specific example of how your business has adapted to the current public health crisis. We'll lead that off, Mike.
Yeah, so obviously coming from a restaurant standpoint, we have certain safety precautions. Even before COVID, every restaurant outlet has to be certified by the Board of Health. I think specifically what we've done is kind of take that to the next level. So I know a lot of restaurants are doing it as well, but setting up hand sanitizer stations throughout the restaurant when guests enter our outdoor dining patio. We have a hand sanitizer dispenser. All of our employees wear masks, even back in the kitchen. We do daily COVID screenings, you know, just to protect ourselves and make sure that our staff as well as the guests stay healthy throughout this pandemic. I think one of the biggest factors is the things that people haven't seen. It was the leading up to reopening of the restaurant. It was the planning and the precautionary measures that we all kind of put into it. Before we were allowed to open for outdoor dining, we were doing takeout. And unfortunately, we had to make that decision to say, you know, we're going to stop takeout because it was kind of detrimental to the brand, and it didn't really make sense from a financial standpoint. And we took that time to figure out all the ins and outs of making Josie Kelly specifically approachable to people who want to go out and eat and experience, you know, what dining was and a future of what dining is going to be, just to kind of give people a little bit of normalcy in their lives. And we really try to encapsulate that in the outdoor dining and now the indoor dining that we're doing. But it's very difficult to gauge at this point, because now we have the expenses of masks, of gloves, which are heavily allocated throughout all food distributors, sanitizing equipment, all precautionary measures when it comes to back end restaurant operations, and then the uptick in food costs as well. So it's all just kind of a balancing act that we have to do every day in order to, you know, make this business successful and provide the best experience for the guests coming in.
Thanks, Mike. Jim?
All right. I feel we're doing a great job with that, enhanced cleaning protocols and safety protocols. All of our employees come through and get tested each and every day with temperature, as we have security and greeters at every entrance, greeting patrons as they come in, making sure they have that conversation that they have no active symptoms. And the deep cleaning is funny, because everyone who's ever worked in the casino industry, midnight to 8 shift is when you see all of the people cleaning, and that still goes on. But more so, we've changed our mentality to say, hey, you know, let's celebrate these team members who are doing such a great job, and they're on the day shift, and they're being seen by the customers, and I think it's giving the customers you know, a peace of mind, knowing that, you know, it's not just happening on the midnight day shift, it's happening right in front of them. You know, housekeeping, environmental services, really anybody who works here, we've got to play a role in. If you see somebody who has their mask down below their nose, or, you know, is trying to take a sip of coffee, you know, and we're educating them and being polite about it and saying, hey, you know what, this is what we all have to do. And it's being well received. And for the most part, I think people are cooperating and doing a good job with it.
Thanks, Jim. Let me put in another question from our attendees. From Jim Wooten: to what extent are the South Jersey shore towns becoming year-round residential locations instead of just summer tourist destinations? For Vicki, does the development of the Cape May County airport facility help to establish the county as a permanent residential location?
We are seeing a large number of people show a greater interest in just being here, whether you know, they're renting or they're looking to purchase homes. And we saw that from the very beginning, people coming and staying in their second homes, and people also looking to rent and to be here, to get out of the cities. They saw Cape May County as a safer place to be. And you know, certainly with you know, the expansion of the airport facility with you know, space for innovation businesses, this is you know, economic diversity that we've been searching for, that we didn't anticipate coming from a pandemic. So you know, it's kind of an opportunity that we wouldn't have wanted to come from a pandemic, but it is expanding the opportunity for people to see Cape May County as a desirable place to live. And we've seen an uptick of enrollment in some of our school districts as well, as people can work remotely and choose, you know, a quieter pace of life, a quality of life in Cape May County that they enjoy, you know, as a vacation home maybe, but they've seen an opportunity that they can also work here.
Thanks. So this is for Jim and Mike again. Of the operational changes you've made, which do you think will become part of the new normal for your business/industry? Mike, can you want to start that off?
Yeah, I think as far as the operational changes, we are going to be living with COVID for a while, even if, the numbers go down, people's perception of staying healthy is still going to be there. So I think we're going to continue these sanitation and safe practices for the foreseeable future. But I also think that outdoor dining is going to become one of the new norms for South Jersey in particular. A couple of years ago, I was interviewed for an article in Atlantic City about alfresco dining, and we really did not have a lot of dining. Coming from a bigger metropolitan area like Philly and New York, you see tables out on the sidewalk everywhere you go. It's part of the restaurant, it's extended seating, it's a bigger revenue stream for the restaurants. So I think going forward, that's going to be a kind of a trend throughout restaurants. But I think when it comes down to the restaurants, we're going to have to be able to format menus and be able to offer service in those menus as well. So I think outdoor dining is here to stay. The safety precautions are here to stay, and just making each venue kind of more welcoming and inviting to everybody who wants to come into it.
Thanks, Mike. Jim?
Michael, I agree wholeheartedly. I think a lot of these things that we're implementing will be here to stay. Just as an example, on the food and beverage side, we host a lot of banquets, and moving forward, I don't see the long lines of double-sided buffets where everybody gets up and hits the buffet again. It's going to be a lot more individuals, from our staff serving, plated. So I foresee, some of this staying for quite a while.
Anthony, could I add to that as well?
Sure.
I have to agree. I think that a lot of the municipalities really reached out to their constituents and to their business owners in the restaurant industry to accommodate them in passing ordinances really in a proactive way. And, I think people have really enjoyed the opportunity for this outdoor dining, and businesses invested in technology with ordering from QR codes. They've invested in, patio heaters and umbrellas and, outdoor seating. And so, I think that, both from the industry side and the municipal side and from the customer side, people are going to want to have this continue. And I think that it's good for everybody. It's healthier, you're out in the fresh air. And it also draws more people in. People see that restaurant is there, where if everybody is inside, you don't necessarily see that a restaurant is there. So I think it's a win-win for everybody if it stays.
Good point. Thanks, Vic. So this is a question for everybody. We'll let Oliver lead it off. Have you observed any specific consumer trends or changes in consumer behavior? Do you believe these trends and changes will outlast the current public health crisis?
So sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously to go back to something Michael, said at the outset, I think as everyone obviously went into lockdown and over the course of the summer, understandably there was enormous amounts of caution on everyone's part, and to some extent, last spring when we were kind of trying to think about where this was headed over the course of the summer, independent of sanctions and state-sponsored orders and mandates and whatnot. I ultimately had a conversation with someone where I said, at the end of the day, it's going to be the consumer who probably decides how this all shakes out over the course of the summer, and moving forward, I would continue to hold that view. To Jim's comment about flying and all of these things at the end of the day, given all of the, the comforts and the appearances and, the real efforts to make people safe, at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of consumers already, I think you can see, who are, already comfortable and have largely tried to resume their lives, right? And other folks, for a variety of different reasons, understandably, they're in high risk categories. they're going to continue to hold off, right, until much longer. And so I think there's going to be this kind of, as we come out of this and hopefully a recovery begins to really take hold in 2021. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be largely kind of this this tug between folks that really feel comfortable in a variety of situations, whether it be in an airplane or a restaurant or a casino floor, versus those who are kind of holding back. And I think it's hard to say which way that goes. I think a lot of it will also have to do with what happens with the actual virus itself, which of course is living its own life independently of what human beings are think about it. So that's what I would say.
Anybody else want to take a shot at that?
Yeah. So kind of what I mentioned before, we noticed a trend in consumers where guests were coming in, they were ordering more food, they were eating more, and they were ordering higher priced items. We thought going into this that it was going to be more of a quick service, casual trend. However, I think the overall consensus that we came to is that people are hungry, excuse the pun, for this normal type of dining again, being able to go out and enjoy moments with their family or their partner or their spouse that they haven't been able to enjoy through quarantine. So through that, we saw an increase in food sales and a little bit of a decrease in alcohol and liquor sales. I think with that, this puts a responsibility on the operators in the restaurants to go ahead and take the menus that they're serving and the styles that they're serving the food in and be able to transition or adapt that to the season, because a majority of our seating is still outside. So if it's colder outside, we want to have hotter food items, a little bit heavier, things that are going to travel well and withstand a little bit of a chill once you go outside. But also sourcing locally for restaurants, because that's going to be one of the biggest factors. Like I said before, the cost of foods and the cost of goods is going up substantially. So as a restaurant operator, you want to find the best deal and the best quality of being able to keep a certain price point so you don't alienate any of your existing clientele. So through that, you're going to start to see a lot more restaurants shopping locally, be more conscious on the takeout containers that they use, because that's still going to be a sizable portion of business. So looking at compostable takeout containers and, trying to adapt and keep new services unique to their brand to be able to keep their customers and clientele fed throughout the winter.
Thanks, Mike. A question popped in for me from our good friend Izzy Posner. And the question is, how do I account for the increased visitation from New York? Can we retain them? Did other venues see that increase? But I see Sarah would like to answer that question, so I want to give her a shot at that. Go ahead.
You want me to answer that question?
Say again, Sarah?
You're asking me to answer that question?
Well, it said, didn't you put a note on there? You'd like to answer that one?
No.
Okay, so I'll answer. So we saw the increase in New York visitation because New York was virtually shut down and they had no entertainment options. So now why they skipped over the northern part of the state and got down to Atlantic City, I'm not quite sure of that. But I think the Open Container Act on the boardwalk helped. So they had a combination of outside entertainment as far as the amusement park goes, our eating and drinking, and the casinos. So I think it was a combination. So it made us an attractive destination for New Yorkers. And like I said, there was very limited options for people in New York this year. And we were somewhat surprised, but our market is over 60% North Jersey and New York on a normal basis, but it ticked up 25, 30% this year. But I think that's the reason. How do we retain it? How long is a piece of string? Who knows? Because we don't know what's going to happen with the regulations. I mean, if everything opens up again, we'll change it. The outside outside markets may not be as attractive. But, you know, in our situation is move the people along. We had long lines this year in our food and beverage operation, that at some point probably took a toll on us. But restaff, retool. Now, another thing that hasn't been talked about is the fact that we lost our entire foreign exchange program. And we know how, you know, we don't hire foreign exchange over locals, we hire all locals. But when you go to a second shift during the summer, that's when your foreign exchange comes in handy, because then you can fill all the vacancies, you can fill all the shifts. And we struggled this year because we had an abundance of minors. So it truncates your schedule every day. So you're closing earlier. So in our case, we had to leave some rides open, some food establishments closed because we just didn't have the help. And as much as we tried, it looked, and there was a double-edged sword with the government assistance, or people were making more money on unemployment than they were working. So it was harder to get people off unemployment back into the workforce. But we employ about 300 people at Steel Pier. 140 of those are foreign exchange students in the summertime that we depend on. So to fill that gap with locals, there's just not enough help there. There's not enough in the work pool locally to fill that. So that's also going to be a challenge, and that has a direct effect on service and quality of service. So those things are all going to be factors in how we retain the business for next year.
Anthony, if I could just touch on something, you had mentioned that people are making more money staying at home, but also from a consumer base, people have more disposable income using on, entertainment opportunities like Steel Pier to come and stay in the casino. And as we move further along, more and more people are either furloughed or laid off. That federal kicker is no longer available to them. And so it would be very hard to sustain that high visitation rate from New York as we move in to the fall and the winter.
I'm sorry, I lost my video, but I'll add to what Anthony was saying about the employment situation. Cape May County suffered greatly from the employment situation and the unintended consequence of the federal PUA, where we found, many people who fill our seasonal positions were really in a quandary of, making more collecting the PUA subsidy and, staying on unemployment, which might be the best situation for their family, or going back to their seasonal position, which might be, an 8-week position. And, we could not get people back to work. We didn't have the J-1 visa program. And, we've seen situations, where business owners have decided to permanently close a business location rather than put their brand reputation at risk because they could not fill those positions. And, that really hurts our destination. And we don't know if the J-1 summer work travel program is going to be available to us for next year. We're working very, very hard right now to, to secure that for next year. But our business owners, like Anthony, would be recruiting right now to bring those international students to work positions for next summer, summer of 2021. So this is a very, very important issue, whether you're employing 20 or 30, 100, or 1 or 2 students. That's a critical issue for the industry, in the state of New Jersey. But, really important for, Atlantic City south to Cape May County.
Thanks, Vicki. Jim, a question for you. Came in from Jack, and it's the question: are you booking national acts for 2021 in entertainment?
Right now, our entertainment is on hold. If you look at indoor gatherings, it differs from indoor dining. Indoor gatherings right now, like in a meeting or a conference setting, is at capped at 25. Now, through Steve Calendar's leadership of the Casino Association, they've had discussions with the governor. We're hoping to increase that beyond 25 to, if we take that first step to maybe 250, socially distanced, and with all the protocols, wearing a mask and, the whole time that you're in. But to answer the question, no, and it's been very, very frustrating because we have groups that want to come and want to meet, but are unable to, whether it be their attendees are coming from states that are on the quarantine list, or they're just higher than the 25. But it's interesting in speaking to all of the different groups that are canceling or rescheduling for 2021 or 2022, it's not all the same answer. At first, there was a concern of COVID and the health and the safety of the attendees, but I'm not hearing that as much anymore. Now I'm hearing about cancellations because of funding is not there, whether it be from a state or municipality level. So we're receiving some cancellations right then. There's other groups that, quite honestly, they have their attendees, but they have a trade show portion. And the trade show portion is what funds the convention. Well, the trade show portion is made up of convention or corporations who have travel bans in place. So whereas a group might have the willingness to meet, they don't have the financial piece of the puzzle because so many of their exhibitors at the trade show wouldn't be able to attend. So there's a lot of different layers, a lot of different reasons why people are canceling. One other thing, and I don't know if the person asking the question is more asking about the entertainment end, but for instance, the one that's near and dear to my heart is a 3-day fish show that was on the beach in Atlantic City. Now they have rescheduled for the exact same dates in 2021. Fingers crossed, we're going to get back to that time when, hopefully sooner than later, when we can all gather in large settings like that in a safe way.
Thanks, Jim.
Yep.
Oliver, I want to let you lead off on this question. We are certainly living through unprecedented and unpredictable times. What variables do you think will have the greatest impact on the industry in the next 6 to 8 months?
I think that, to go back to a previous remark I made, I think that number one, of course, will be advances in public health, right? What the direction of public health, which, especially as it relates to, antiviral treatments and possibly a vaccine, that obviously is a game changer in 2021 if it comes along in the first quarter and the second quarter, right? The world starts to look, and I'm not even talking about, it's obviously going to take quite a long time, were we to even get a vaccine or vaccines, which seems perhaps likely, before that really rolls out. That's going to take, you can't just, inoculate 300 million Americans overnight. That'll take some time, but I actually think that just the psychological impact that will have will be huge, moving forward. And so that can never be, overestimated, just the impact that might have on psychology. But I also think from a public policy perspective, I think that there are 3 or 4 things, kind of in the near term, looking out at least over the first quarter, maybe the second quarter of 2021, which are important. Number one, I would start with is, there is a looming, if not already well underway, state and local government fiscal crisis going on. New Jersey has got a $7 billion gap for the current fiscal year. Local governments, as Vicky has noted, are under obvious duress. Tax revenues have basically plummeted across the board for everyone. So to the extent that we see a second federal response, which seems increasingly unlikely in 2020, but perhaps might be in the offing for early 2021, I certainly think that would help. I also think that there's a real urgent need to, go back in to a specific program that the Small Business Administration runs that's targeted specifically for small businesses, that's usually used and leveraged in the aftermath of kind of natural disasters, And there have been all sorts of problems associated with that have kind of come to light over the last several months. So I think, dealing with those kinds of problems is important. A larger state and local government kind of aid package is important. And then, on the UI benefits, I don't know if I'm going to push back on people here. I certainly understand what everyone has said as it relates to employees. I mean, obviously, to the extent that someone has an opportunity to latch onto one of the federal COVID-specific UI programs, like, I think it's the number today is 12 million, if I remember off the top of my head in the most recent week. That's in addition to the 12 million, right, that are on a regular state UI program. So it's almost 25 million people that are still collecting UI benefits at this time in the US. Every single employee, of course, is also, to Jim's point, is a consumer, right? And so the question of, getting the UI benefits right, perhaps the $600 enhanced benefit was too much, but I think kind of from a larger, kind of a larger macro perspective, at the end of the day, those enhanced benefits do put dollars in people's pockets. And so every single employer, right, is also very interested in having consumers who have more money in their pocket, needless to say. So this is a delicate, balance. And when you think about individuals ending up at the end of the week with something like 40% of their, pre-COVID lockdown salaries, it's very tough to run any business, frankly, when people have 40% of what they typically have in their pockets. So I don't know if it's a, real pushback, but it's something that's obviously needs to be addressed in 2021 at the federal level. And I don't know, off the top of my head what the exact balance is, but I think dealing with the UI, some state local aid, and fixing some of the problems that specifically small businesses have run into would be very important in terms of like factors, moving out into 2021.
Thanks, Oliver. Anybody else want to comment?
Yeah, I think the biggest variable going forward is ultimately going to be people. It's people's perception about the businesses, about the pandemic, about their own health. Obviously, us being in the hospitality industry, our businesses don't succeed and don't thrive if the people don't come to them. That's the biggest factor that we face. And I think going into flu and cold season is only going to heighten people's anxiety about the virus. And, going forward, we're going to have to be able to kind of combat that as a hospitality industry. But I think that all this being said, this builds up and this puts a lot more pressure on 2021 spring and summer season being that much better than 2020's. So it's all about just weathering the storm now until we get to next year.
Thanks, Mike. Hey, Jim, a question popped in. Did the casinos receive any federal funding to help with shortfalls in revenue?
Anthony, I don't have the answer to that. I know that that there was a package being looked at for some subsidies and some relief, and I'm really not privy to that information. So, okay, yeah, I want to be honest.
Yep. Okay. I have a question for Oliver. New Jersey is well known for its tax burdens, and tourism in South Jersey is induced by drive-in visitation. Do you believe there are maybe material long-term impacts in visitation and/or spending levels from the toll road hikes, plus 30% in the past couple of tax and gas increases?
Yeah, this is always an interesting question. The toll levies and gas. There's in some sense, there's kind of an interesting trade-off to the extent that, if you go back several years ago, for instance, and I don't remember, people here will probably remember better than I do, but I want to say it might have been like the summer of like 13 or 14. And gas prices approached like almost $5 a gallon. Some of you may remember that, right? And, there was a big kind of debate locally about, what effect this was going to have going into the summer months. And I think what's interesting about these kind of, these little blips along everyone's life is that oftentimes you actually see people substitute a local option for a much further option, right? And so to the extent, go back to Vicky's comments at the outset, I think to the extent that you had people this summer who were, kind of shying away from long-term travel for a variety of reasons, maybe actually end up choosing something that's much more local that perhaps is kind of in their own backyard, so to speak, and they normally wouldn't think about, and so they end up there. And I oftentimes think about gas prices in the same way. And so, to the extent that you've got gas prices that are going up or moving up, maybe that actually induces more local, right, substitution for entertainment than would otherwise be the case. And as for the tolls, I think, go to Michael's comment. I think at the end of the day, 30% obviously sounds like a lot. It was obviously tied to the fiscal crisis that the state is facing to some extent. But I think people are going to go to the shore, they're going to the shore. And whether they're going to pay 50 cents or, $1.50 to go through a toll, for most people, it's just, it's part of the cost of the entertainment that they seek. So I don't know. I mean, on the margins, do taxes matter? Yes, of course. But kind of at a macro level, I'm not sure there's a huge effect.
Thanks. So I have an interesting question here, and I think we can all take a shot, but I'd like to lead off, if you don't mind. And the question is, with cannabis legalization, a ballot question seemingly likely to pass, and a medical dispensary in South Carolina on the boardwalk in the AC that is clearly positioned to pivot to commercial sales, how do you think this may impact shore tourism starting next year? And if I could just lead off, and I don't want to get on a soapbox, but this has been something very near and dear to our hearts. And I've published a few articles in opposition of this because it'll have a direct negative impact on businesses like mine. And the primary reason is, we have 16 to whatever age on operating equipment. And even in the other areas of our business, food and beverage, games, but especially in the operating of equipment, rides, in our mind, we think this is a detrimental issue and a dangerous one. So it will make us, we'll have to be much more vigilant, and all of our employees are drug tested. You can't apply without a drug test in our facility. And then there's random drug tests throughout the season. However, this creates a whole another level of concern in our industry, speaking for us. But I'd like to know how the panel feels about it, and the question that was posed, how it's going to affect our tourism industry. So let's start off with Vicki.
Yeah, Anthony, I agree with everything you said. I think that, this is another thing that added expense for business community. And certainly at this time, it's something that the business community just does not need. I think if we were talking about a medical dispensary, that's a whole different issue. But that's not what this is. And, I just think that this issue is the wrong thing at the wrong time, and we need to put the brakes on it.
Jim?
Well, I was curious how, in Las Vegas, they have recreational marijuana that's legal. But if you anticipate like walking down the strip and seeing dispensaries, that's really not how it's positioned. The city, I think, did a very good job. They're kind of in certain locations, not really in pedestrian areas. So I hope that if it does become legal, that it's not in your face on the boardwalk in some of the tourism areas.
Thanks. Let's move right down the line. Oliver?
Yeah, I don't know how I kind of, on one hand, I certainly think that there's something to what Jim and Vicki are saying. I think that it's, you could see certainly that this might actually detract folks. It's also, of course, true that perhaps the better way to, perhaps the way an economist thinks about this is to say, well, okay, let's actually think about the revenues that this is going to generate and what's going to happen to the revenues, right? So you might actually be able to sell someone on this idea if you said, well, every, 50% of every dollar that the state collects over the next decade is going to be redirected into supporting small businesses in some way or something. That would be a much more interesting question, frankly. So I don't know. I think that I probably agree with Jim. My sense of this is that it's probably going to pass. And then I guess we'll have to see, what at the municipal level, local governments decide to do with it. But to the extent that it does pass, as if I was a municipal local official, that I might actually go to Trenton with this thought in mind, unless you want us to try to find, local ways around it, then, what piece of the tax dollar are you going to send my way?
Mike, any opinion?
Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword. I think for Atlantic City itself, specifically speaking to the city, opening recreational dispensaries might be detrimental to kind of the appeal going forward, making it more of a family-oriented city, which I think is a transition that a lot of operators want to see. But then again, kind of going back to what Oliver was saying, if there was a pilot program kind of put in place to be able to redirect revenue or redirect taxes to being able to fund community programs or outreach programs, having a kind of city oversight of these finances and reinvesting back into the city, much like they do with the CRTA with the casinos, I think it's a positive. I think coming from my generation where cannabis and marijuana is a little bit more socially accepted, this isn't too big of a hot button topic. I mean, I live in Atlantic City. I live right on New York Avenue. So smelling somebody smoking it or going on the boardwalk and seeing somebody smoking it, it's normal. So I think the idea is it's already here when it comes to an operator standpoint. Obviously, you don't want to have people under the influence at work, but that comes down to the responsibility of the not just the business operator, but also the dispensaries themselves. So I think it can be a kind of positive thing for the city as long as it's regulated and there's the same oversight that they have with alcohol with the ABC and tobacco sales and even gaming. So I think there's going to be a lot of trial and error when it comes down to it, but I think the positive upside with the tax revenue, especially in this deficit, and just the overall appeal to maybe a younger clientele to want to come down to New Jersey or South Jersey in particular for that sole reason would be beneficial to a lot of operators, bars, restaurants, casinos, hotels, and even amusement parks.
Okay, thanks, Mike. So what advice, this is for everyone on our panel, what advice would you have for others going in our industry fall 2020, planning for the summer?
Ooh. I'll start off.
Go ahead.
Don't go to culinary school.
Thanks,
no,
Mike.
I'm 20 years old, and I was given the opportunity to oversee the kitchen of a multi-million-dollar restaurant after, previously owning my own restaurant. And I feel like more than not, I've had a lot more exposure to how businesses operate within the past 5 years. Hospitality is a lot of variables. I mean, one of the things that an old manager used to tell me was, every day we're put on a stage and this is all a show. So, there's maybe 5% visibility when it comes to the guest perception, and the other 95% is what happens behind the scenes. And I think the second that, a aspiring entrepreneur, operator, or restaurateur thinks about that, and they accept the fact that, you know, it's not a glamorous thing. You have to deal with the stresses, you have to deal with multiple personalities and the anxiety going into this industry. I mean, more so now than before, then it becomes appealing. But I think 9 times out of 10, it's not very rewarding. But when you do get that one moment and that one success, and that's really, I think that's what everybody aspires to. So.
Okay.
I would say it's important that you stay focused and don't give up hope, because it's not a matter of if we're coming out of this, is when we're coming out of it. And we have to be prepared both mentally and creativity. The creativity is going to be necessary to help move us along. I deal with a bunch of salespeople who are unable to sell meetings and conventions, and when you bring in a large meeting and convention, it has a reciprocal effect on all of your team members. The energy in the building when there's a large convention. We're missing that right now. We have missed it, personally and professionally. And it's fewer team members that are here serving those guests who are here for the meetings and conventions. So, what I tell, my staff is, just stay focused. We're going to get through this, and we've got to be prepared to absolutely hit the ground running. Professionally, the timing on this was such that we are now part of Caesars Entertainment. Tropicana's parent company, Eldorado Gaming, bought Caesars Entertainment. Now we're melding the sales systems together. So there's so much for me and my team here at Tropicana that is new, with whether they're systems or the standard operating procedures on how they run a very, very large meetings and convention business. And we're really able to dive into it right now. So we are staying optimistic. We are looking into the future and staying hopeful.
Thanks, Jim.
To say I agree with both Jim and Mike and their comments. And I think that, just as we saw in the summer season, people wanted to get out, they wanted to do things. And now we're into the fall, we're looking at the holiday season. And again, people want their lives to be as normal as they can be, but we have to look at it differently. And I think that's, we have to offer that as much as we can. And Jim used the word creative. We just have to be creative in how we offer those things. We have to do smaller gatherings, and we have to, offer, as we look at the holiday season, we have to think about how can we do the holidays, the way we might naturally do them, but maybe in a smaller way. And so we as business owners and we as destinations, we have to think about how are we going to promote ourselves that way, so that people, so that we get through this together, and we just don't lose that hope. And because I think that's what we have to offer people, because we are such a destination, a place that people can come to that's away from the hectic and the chaos, that really is close enough that they can drive here. I mean, we've talked about that previously, that they can get away from that chaos. It's just a short distance away, but it's far enough that it really is a respite. People say so many times when they come to Cape May County, as soon as they cross that bridge, they just get that breath of fresh air. And, I know it's like that going to Atlantic City or Margate or Vintner, it's these barrier island destinations that people come to, that it's just like, I can just breathe again. And that really is what we have to offer people. And we need to embrace that, and we need to offer it. And that's hope for a lot of people, and that's our bread and butter. And we just need to put it out there.
Good point. Good point. Real quick, Jim, a question directly for you. And I'm going to paraphrase the question, but is the online gaming cannibalizing the brick and mortar operation of the casino industry?
I don't think so. I think it's an advancement in the industry. Internet gaming, there's not a greater hold percentage as you would if they were physically in your building, and you don't have the opportunity to sell them a show ticket or have them in your restaurants or enjoy the other amenities. But some of the discussions I've had with our marketing folks have, we'd be surprised that there's someone who's predominantly an internet gamer who will come in for a one night and have a great experience. So it's not all or nothing. And during the downtime when we were closed, thank goodness we had it. Because that was the bright light there.
Thanks.
Anthony, before we go to the last question, I just want to remind the audience, if you could please submit any questions at this time, any last minute questions, we'd love to have them. And I'll let Anthony go ahead and ask the last one we have.
So the last question for everyone, it says, Oliver may not have an opinion on it, but what advice would you give someone considering going into the hospitality industry?
Yeah, I'll pass on that. There are others here that are far more qualified than I am to answer that question. So I'll pass the baton.
Thanks, Alan. Who wants to kick it off?
I'll take it. I have loved this industry. It has been so very good to me. I've got a passion for it, and it takes the right person to get into this. And at this day and age, you have to be a little bit more resilient, but I still think the opportunities still exist. Whether you take a front desk job, you just have a bigger picture and a bigger idea of what you want to do when you come out, and keep trying to progress through your career. I still think the hospitality and the casino industry it can be a very good experience for somebody. Yep.
Mike?
Sorry, can you repeat what the prompt was?
What advice would you give a young person considering the hospitality industry today?
I mean, besides to culinary school, like I said before, going into the hospitality industry for me, I kind of grew up in this. My father was a director of food and beverage at the casino, so I was just heavily immersed in it at a young age. But I think if you're not, 110% committed to it and all the kind of virtues that go with it, then pursue it. But if there's that little spark of light and you think that this is something that you could really find a career in, then pursue it. I mean, it has a lot of ups and downs, like I said before, but there's that little slice of, being a chef. I mean, specifically going out there and talking to guests and seeing how their meal was, or cooking for somebody's 40th birthday or their anniversary, or, you get to create memorable moments in this industry. And I think that's really what enticed me to get into it. Just seeing people smile and just kind of knowing that you helped create a memory for those people that are going to last throughout the years. So I say definitely pursue it. Just be ready for hard work.
All right. Mickey?
Yeah. Well, Jim and Mike are absolutely right. I would just say that, in Cape May County, we say that everybody is working in the hospitality industry because our economy is, really totally driven by tourism and hospitality. But of course there are people who are truly on the front lines. And I think that's what the question is really getting at. And, I think that it is, it's something that I would totally recommend, but there are so many different avenues of it, whether you're on the front line or you're in the back of the house, so to speak. And you need to know where your gifts are, because you'll either love it or hate it. And but it's truly a rewarding industry, like Mike was saying, because you get to be really part of somebody's life, who, think of the family that's saving all year long to get to come, to spend a few days or a week where we're living every day, and we take for granted what is their special place that they get to just spend a little while, and they dream about coming back. I mean, that's really, really special. And so if you're thinking about a career in it, I say go for it.
I personally was recently asked by a couple of young high school students about hospitality and whether they should consider it, considering what's going on. And my answer to them is, in the hospitality industry, the training you get in the hospitality industry, you could take that training and transition into anything else, because it's always going to be a valuable tool. I tell a story. When I attended Disney Institute some years ago as part of my graduate studies, there was 30 people in our class. 29 of those people for hospitality training and customer service training, 29 were from the CIA. So it was hard for me to figure out, but even the CIA and places like that, they want their people to have hospitality training and customer service training. So you could take those skills from the hospitality industry and transition into anything else. And most people in other industries want people to have that training to enhance their own industry. So I still think it's a good bet. And I agree with all of you. So at this time, I want to take one more question from our attendees. And this is an interesting question. To what extent is our problem demographics? The seasonal industry fueled by older and younger workers, as older workers are the ones who were most worried about going back during COVID times. Would it be better served by promoting an area as one with good schools, good family, area to encourage younger families? So the question really is, do we encourage those people to come down to not only take advantage of our business, but also our year-round living and things of that nature? So is that something we want to promote and push as an industry?
So promote year-round living?
Yes.
Absolutely. This is a great place to live year-round, because we have a wonderful quality of life here. But I think if you need to understand the seasonality. There are people who come here and if they don't understand that, they can be unhappy. But what's been wonderful with what we call the coastal shift is people who are moving here from very highly populated metro areas that really love the fact that they're not commuting 2 hours each way to their jobs. And so the quality of life here far surpasses many other areas. And but you have to you have to want to be in a place like this, where you might be driving a little bit farther away to get some of the other amenities, entertainment amenities, or things like that you might have had in that metro area. So there's a trade-off for everything. And I definitely think that there's a place somewhere for everybody. But our part of the state of New Jersey is a wonderful area, and I think we definitely should promote that. And we have so much to offer, and it's the word is getting out, and a lot of people are desiring to come here, and I think we should definitely promote that.
Jane, at this point, I want to kick it back to you. First of all, let me thank the panelists. I'm not sure where we are on time, but let me check back with Jane right now.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony, and thank you to the panelists for a fantastic panel. I wish we could all give you a round of applause, but you don't get to hear it all, but I'll give you a round of applause. I think it was an awesome panel. Thank you all for your time and your insight, and I know that the participants have enjoyed it as well. If anyone had a question that we did not answer, feel free to email us at light@stockton.edu. And your feedback is important to us, so we have an exit survey that you will be emailed at the conclusion of the panel. I hope you'll take the time to fill it out because it will help us to produce future events. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for spending your morning with us.
Jane, can I just add real quick before we go that I thought this morning was wonderful, and I thank the rest of the panel for being here. But what I think we all look forward to is that face-to-face. Next time we can do this, that we're face-to-face and we can look people in the eye and shake their hand and give each other hugs if we know you. And so hang in there. Sooner than later, we'll redo this again and we'll be face-to-face.
Yeah, hopefully the Shorecast in the spring will be face-to-face.
Beautiful.
Indeed.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you, everyone.
everyone.
So much
Bye.
for the opportunity. Bye all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.